peer groups. We're also potentially doing a food justice short course, trying to integrate undergraduates more into the work that we're doing. So there's a sign-up sheet in the back. Please, if you're interested in being involved, either as just a person who gets emails from us or someone who's on the organizing group, we would love to have more people. So let's talk about today. For us, we chose today's theme, food and labor, because over 1/3 of the US workforce is employed in the food industry in some way. And labor is a critical component of our food system, but it's often overshadowed by concerns about consumer safety or the environment, which are also important, but so is labor. And we, as a network, really think that a just food system means a just system for everyone within that. So everyone that brings that food from the farm to the table. So, as a disclaimer, we've joined together just, I think, a wonderful group of speakers today, but this is by no means representative of all of the different links in the chain of food labor. And so, we're really excited to have a conversation after this presentation to talk about what are some other ways that we can think about food labor, integrate these different perspectives. And so, just a little bit of housekeeping, again, make sure to sign in, and each speaker is going to have around 10 minutes to talk a little bit about their work. We've given them some questions about sort of our common themes for today around food and labor, and then hopefully we'll have a long period for discussion. So I'm just going to introduce folks as they start. But up first we have Abby Rosen. Abby oversees the development and implementation of the culinary and job and life skills curriculum with Caridad's culinary training program. She earned a BS in hotel and restaurant management from NAU and an associate's in culinary arts from Pima Community College. Abby brings to Caridad over 13 years of professional baking experience, ranging from fine dining restaurants to resorts. So join me in welcoming Abby.
Hi, thank you so much for having me today. As I was so wonderfully introduced, my name is Abby Rosen. I am the Culinary Job and Life Skills Instructor at Caridad Community Kitchen, where we work with an amazing team as a program of the Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona. I get to bring a really interesting program to represent because we have many, many different hats that we wear. So I'd like to briefly tell you about our program and then tell you about how it relates to some of the questions and things that we will be talking about today. We are primarily a training program of the food bank. And so what that means is that we get to assist wonderful clients in our community who have come to our program who are facing some sort of employment barrier in the workforce, be that out of long-term recent incarceration or a stay-at-home parent who's now trying to gain a new skill. We help bring them in. They go through a rigorous interview process to make sure that they meet our criteria and that they can clearly identify what their barrier has been. From there, they go through a 10-week intensive culinary training program where we're doing everything from which end of the knife to hold to how do we work well with others on a team and actually resolve conflicts instead of just holding on to them and foster a place that we really want to work and grow in. At the end of the program, our students graduate, and then we have about an 85% range that are now working afterwards out of 116 graduated students in the last 3.5 years. We estimate that about 75% of those are working within the food industry, so we're really excited to speak about their experiences and what my experiences have been for challenges and opportunities that we are still facing. Other parts of our program are that while our students are doing their training, what makes us different from other culinary schools is that they will be producing 14,000 meals a month to go to those in need in our community. So if you've heard much about other culinary schools or seen the ads, you don't come out an executive chef, you come out a really great prep cook, and you make about $9.50 an hour. And that's what our students are competitive with. And they actually have hands-on experience in producing it while feeding the hungry in our community and using highly perishable food. We also do after-school meals for the Boys and Girls Clubs, and we have a for-profit catering department that we are able to hire our alumni back to do. As we are looking throughout our program and always doing it, our training program, and trying to figure out, are we making an impact? Is the program working? Because like with all nonprofits, we run at a deficit. And we want to make sure that our money is being used wisely that has been given to us by our community, by federal grants, and by private donations. Our biggest challenge is also tied to the biggest and most wonderful opportunity about the food industry and working in labor in there. And that is that anyone can still go into the food industry without a high school diploma and low skill and do really well for themselves, if they are able to start at a base rate pay of between $8.75 and $9.50 an hour and start at that entry-level position and work their way up. So on the other hand, our biggest challenge is that you start at $9.50 an hour, and that because it can be low-skilled workers or people that have been exploited in the past, they can be open to exploitation in the future. So what we're doing to help change that is we're working to educate our students in the front lines of saying, this is what you should not be going out just to get any job. You should be going out to get a career. Here is what you look for as red flags. Here's how you identify and match what your values are and what you need in a place, and is it going to fit with those so you're not hopping and hopping and hopping and hopping. On the other side, when we have employers come to us, we speak to them and say, that's wonderful that you want to hire our students, and we are so happy to start this conversation. However, if you're asking someone who you want to have experience to work a graveyard shift independently for $9 an hour, you're going to get what you pay for. And we're not sure that our students are somewhere that we want to go send to that environment. So it's a conversation about educating the students, about educating the employers, and then our final step, where we would like to see going, is educating the consumer. That, as we all, I'm sure, know, because you all have an interest here and that you're here, is that cheap food comes at a price, right? We hear that a lot. And so with that, your cheap food is also coming at the cost of, if that price is too good to be true for your farm to table and it really is coming from that farm, they're not paying their cooks anything. They're not giving them any benefits. They have no maternity leave. This is something that I got to learn when I had my baby. There are very few opportunities for that, and so if that is your priorities, that's what we work with our students to find and hunt and go for the right place so that you can end somewhere that will help you support your family in different areas like that. So those would be our biggest challenges and our biggest opportunities for moving forward. Again, it is about starting the conversation like you all to have here, and thank you very much. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Abby. Next, we're welcoming Jill Guernsey Desapian, who's the Associate Dean for Community Programs at the University of Arizona's College of Public Health. With an academic professional appointment, Ms. Desapian has been involved in community-based public health interventions, policies, and research in Arizona and throughout the Southwest and Mexico for more than 30 years. She's particularly proud of her collaborative work with the Promotora movement throughout the border region, her long-term commitment to community-based participatory research and action, her binational collaborations, and her work to improve the quality of life for farm workers in the United States and Mexico. Today she serves as the principal investigator of the College of Public Health's Graduate Service Learning Program, including the Border Health Service Learning Institute. So join me in welcoming her.
So hi, I came all the way over from the health sciences. How many of you have ever ventured over to the health sciences? Yeah, well, I came with one goal today, and my goal is that at the end of today, you will be thinking a lot about the people who produce the food that you're eating. And I could have spent my time talking to you about farm workers here in Arizona, in the Yuma area and the Wilcox area, and we have a lot of projects at the College of Public Health focusing on that population. But I really wanted you all also to realize that there's another population that is really important to the food that you're eating, and that is the migrant farm worker population in Mexico. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the work that we've been doing with that population and just some information about them. I want you to know that in the U.S., we say there are about 3 million migrant farm workers that are supporting many of the crops that are the food that we eat. In Mexico, there are over 2 million migrant farm workers that move from crop to crop. And if we add in their family members, we're really talking about a population of over 9 million people in Mexico. 40% are indigenous, and you will see on the map that I'm going to be showing you that are coming from the poorest states in Mexico. So just to be clear, I'm talking about internal migration in Mexico. I'm not talking about the farm worker stream that's going from Mexico to the United States. Okay, they come from the 10 poorest states, which include Guerrero, Oaxaca, Chiapas, and Veracruz. 81% of them have not completed secondary school. 43% are between the ages of 18 and 45, so you've got a very large young population. The mean age is 36, and 90% do not have any kind of formal contract while they're working. This is just a map, so you can see that it is the northern part of Mexico, which is Sonora, Chihuahua, Sinaloa, Baja California, which is considered the wealthier part of Mexico, the much more industrial part of Mexico, but also the much more large agricultural production of Mexico. And you can see that the farm worker population that is migrating is being pulled from the southern states to the northern states to work on the crops. And I've always said, I've said this about the United States, so it's very true in Mexico. With the exception of perhaps the homeless population, I believe that migrant farm workers in both countries are probably the most marginalized population in our country. And it's a little odd considering that the very essence of what they do, we could not live without. So it's kind of ironic. So the College of Public Health, that's over on the other side of Speedway, you guys. We'd love to have you come over there and learn things. We have been working in Sonora since 2007, trying to improve the conditions of farm workers in Sonora. We are talking about large farms, Mexican-owned farms. We're not talking U.S. corporations. We're talking Mexican-owned farms that have anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 workers that they're bringing up from Chiapas, Puebla, etc. Our work is clearly entwined with the living and working conditions and overall well-being of the farm workers. But if we went in and told them that that was our agenda, we would not be working with any of them. So our official agenda is really looking at how to develop interventions that increase farm workers' access to health care and really focusing on prevention. So we've developed an intervention with promotores, with community health workers, where we train workers in these large camps of 3,000 to 5,000 people to actually understand the issues, particularly around heat stress, dehydration, respiratory. We've got like 7 really important topics that grew out of the focus groups and discussions that we had with the farm workers themselves as to what were the issues that they thought that they actually could impact themselves in terms of having control over some of these issues versus really trying to do something where they're going to be running into a brick wall. Mexico has no housing code for the conditions under which migrant farm workers are living, and so we are working with this Secretaría de Desarrollo, Sedesol, to develop a housing code that would be used nationally. We spent gobs of times, and I sent so many graduate students to the internet, find me that housing code, it's got to exist, right? And then when we went to Mexico City and actually sat down with them, we found there is no housing code. So no wonder the growers can house people in any conditions that they want. And we're also looking really closely at the relationship between pesticide exposure and heat exposure, because most of these large farms in Sonora that I'm describing to you, they are harvesting grapes, and they are harvesting table grapes, not wine grapes, and they are harvesting them from May 15th to July 30th. So you can imagine the exposure to heat that they're really under. And when people have looked at pesticide exposure, they have not taken into account the fact that we're sweating when we're out there working. So what does that mean in terms of absorbing pesticides? So if you really want to do something, it's really nice to be in academia, but I'll tell you what, if I did my life over, I'd be an investigative journalist, because we have been working for 7 years on these farms, little by little, getting some of these growers to listen to us, to allow us to have any kind of program on the farms. And lo and behold, in December 2014, an investigative journalist who had spent 2 years all over Sonora and Sinaloa did a 4-article expose on the conditions on these farms. I recommend that you read it if you want to understand what's going on the farms in northern Mexico. And suddenly the growers got very interested in talking to us about how could they improve their housing, how could they improve some of these things. So journalism is the way to go, you guys. Academia takes forever to make change. Sorry. These are just some of the things that they found. I won't go through them. I recommend the series to you. And believe me, all of these growers already knew before it even came out, they knew that this series was coming out. So they were already moving to see how they could counteract this information, et cetera, and stuff. So it really helped us to put our agenda forward of improving the conditions. And then if you know much about what's going on with farm workers in Mexico and Baja California, last spring, all of those raspberries that you all are eating and all my public health students are eating, and they're really into, healthy foods, et cetera, and stuff, they're coming from Baja California, and they're coming from probably the worst possible working and living conditions that you can imagine. 90% is an indigenous population coming from Oaxaca, and they got their act together for the very first time, and they actually had a big strike. Driscoll, all of Driscoll's products are coming from Mexico, and the growers were like shocked because farm workers in Mexico have never organized. Fortunately, many of the farm workers that are in Baja California have also worked in California, and they have had a lot of connections with the United Farm Workers, and so there was the opportunity to really make something good happen, and some good things did happen. But a year later, I went online to see what was going on, and I had talked to some people, and they had a big march when the crop was ready for harvest, and lo and behold, the jornada, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this would be such a large audience, and if you don't speak Spanish, this is basically saying they screwed us again. We are back in the same situation, even though we had a contract that was signed last year. So they're again in a very difficult situation. So the point of everything that I'm saying to you all is that when we work on the farms in Sonora, when it's harvest, when the grapes are being harvested, we were collecting data on a Thursday. I went to Costco on a Saturday, our Costco on Grant, right up here on Grant, and the very grapes that I was there watching the workers harvest and talking to them out were in Costco, and that's the grapes that many people were buying. The raspberries, et cetera, and stuff. The crops that are coming from Mexico are the crops that are coming into Arizona, and it is the food that we're eating. So I really appreciate everything that's being done in the slow food movement and all of the community gardens, et cetera, and stuff. But meanwhile, these large farms still exist. We've got to deal with them, and so we really have to be aware of the interconnection of what's going on in Mexico and our food supply in the U.S. So we really need to support these efforts for organizing farm workers. We really need to pressure Costco, all these places. They say they care about the working conditions. They say they're going to do something. Well, put your money where your mouth is. This is really the time to do it. And my just final thing is, do not believe fair trade labels. They need much more scrutiny. The farm we've been working on for 7 years that has no housing code, that has incredibly bad working conditions, etc., they are fair trade certified. So we really need to work on that as well. So we'll get questions later. Thank you.
Thanks, Jill. So next we have Christina Green.